Good morning. Happy Tuesday. As titled, I'm going to share something pretty personal. So, the emotions might flow. We'll just let it come as it happens. Interesting this morning. I've started working on really getting into like understanding subconscious minds. And so today I told Dave, I'm like, I can I access your subconscious mind? So Dave is good morning, Candace. Dave is he's very open-minded. But he definitely is, I wouldn't say like he is as into like the whole energy spiritual thing that I am. And so I asked him if I could access the subconscious mind so that I could show him, because as I'm going through my journey and I'm going through preparing myself to help others, like I need to be able to write, like really basically practice on other people so that I feel confident. Not practice on other people so that I can make sure that it's working. It's so that I feel confident, because I can't access your subconscious mind if I don't have the faith that I can do it. So he was like, sure, whatever. It's really difficult because he likes to be funny. He makes jokes. And I'm like, okay, you have to focus on the question that I'm asking you. Otherwise, I know, huh? Oh, yeah. Do you like my crazy Band-Aid? I chopped my thumb with a pair of scissors. And this is a blue Band-Aid from work because it's metal detectable. Yeah, I was cutting, when I did my home tour the other morning, I was cutting off a thing off of a jar, and I totally just stuck my thumb right in there, like full force, chop. So as I'm telling Dave, I'm like, the only thing I need you to do is focus on this question, because if you don't, then your subconscious mind isn't going to answer me correctly. And of course, he has all these like smart remarks. So finally, I got him to focus and he did it. And it was crazy to me because literally watched him and he went from kind of being like, do, right? To suddenly his eyes got big. And I was like, look, you just did it. You just answered me. And he's like, that was so weird. I'm like, right? It was. So anyway, kind of cool. Okay. So today, I want to talk to you about something, that is really important when you're going through life and you have to make a really big decision. And I'm going to tell you personally about my own decision. And as I mentioned, I might get a little emotional, so we'll just flow with it. All right. So it is October. It has been 3 years since my daughter was born. If you're just new to this, she was born with a known heart condition. So we knew from an ultrasound that she had a heart condition, but because of course my body was running the show before she was born, we didn't know how bad it would be, but is what we were told was to expect her to be born and to potentially need to have open heart surgery within 4 days of her being born, and then probably again at 4 months, and then again when she was probably 2. They didn't know what her life expectancy would be. They said they've seen children not live past 4. They've seen children live into adulthood. So really up in the air. So she was born. We had her right at the University of Utah so she could go directly to Primary Children's Medical Center. When she was born, she was just fine. Couldn't tell that she had a heart issue. They had her in a little incubator thing. They brought her so I could see her, and then they wheeled her across the little catwalk from the University of Utah to Primary Children's, and Dave went with her. And then was really hard because I got stuck in a spot in the hospital that I never even thought about. I got put in the spot in the hospital with new moms without babies, because you don't think about it, but they have a place like that because they don't want you as a mom that just delivered your baby that doesn't have your baby to listen to other babies cry. So I was there with other mommies that had lost their baby, or their baby was in critical care like mine, or they were from the prison. And so their babies had been taken away. Anyways, so that was kind of a mental mess up, just to be in a spot like that. But anyway, she ends up doing great. We're able to go and hold her. We can bottle feed her. She's not hooked up to anything. And then she gets this really nasty infection. And I can't even remember what it's called, but it's just a random infection that some babies get. And then she had to have surgery immediately to take out part of her colon. And then things were just up and down, up and down, up and down. All you need to know at this point is that towards the end, they started weaning her off of everything, and she was doing really well. And we were progressing. We were going to go to the next floor at the hospital, which is where you go when you're transitioning to go home. And I was so excited because she was off oxygen. She was just chugging along. She was doing so good. And they started weaning her off of one of her medications. And I knew that day as I was holding her that she was breathing differently. But you have other people, medical care people there. So I wasn't like highly alarmed by it, but I could tell she was struggling a little bit. And I went down to stay in my camper in the parking lot, which is where I was living, and for the night. And I got a phone call that my baby had coded. So I ran back up to the unit where she was, and I stood outside of her room while I watched the medical care team try to resuscitate her. And she, of course, was just laying flat on the table. And they asked me if I wanted to go in and see her, and I couldn't. I couldn't do it. And so I stayed out, and I watched from a distance as they tried to resuscitate my baby. And they finally got her back. She was put, obviously, back onto oxygen. They got her back on her medication, and they got her stable. And they said, in the morning, we'll further assess what happened and why she coded. So I went in the next morning, and the team would walk around and meet with each other in each of the rooms every morning. And so I always made sure that I was up early enough that I could hear whatever the plan was for the day. And so they met and they talked about what they were going to do. So they brought in the little portable EKG type thing, whatever they do to look at her heart. And they looked at it closer. And I just remember sitting in the room, and I was by myself. The only other person there was the nurse. And after they had looked at it, one of the doctors came back in and he said, "So we can see something else that we didn't see before." And he said, basically is what's happening. So we knew that the blood in her heart was mixing together. Like, her chambers weren't separate, and her blood was mixing together. And the fear was that she wouldn't be able to get enough oxygen out of her blood for her body. And that's why she needed medication, and that they were going to do open heart surgery and fix it. So that's what we were going with. But he came in and said, "We can see something that we didn't see earlier." And he said, so basically, as the blood is coming into Kinley's heart, and we have these little flapper valves that open and close, and it allows the blood to come in, and then it shuts so it doesn't go back out into your body. And that way it can do its thing. And he said, your little girl, the little flaps that open and close. And he explained to me that these were like tissue paper. So like super thin, they're little tissue-y paper type things. And he said, your daughter's little flaps that open and close to let the blood in are offset like this. And he said, so they can't shut. So there I was, and I was like, okay, fix it, right? I was like, all right, so what are you going to do now? And I remember him looking at me, and he said, there isn't a surgical solution for what's wrong with her. And I said, what do you mean? Like, what do you mean? So we can just put her on some medication? You can do something, right? And he said, as of right now, there isn't anything we can do. And he said, even going in and doing surgery on her would be like trying to sew wet tissue paper. He said it would just rip and there's no way to fix it. And so then we started through the hell of, the doctors want to meet, they want to talk to other doctors. And so it took 3 days and we met with different people. We sat across from the surgeon. He said, if you want me to, I can open up your baby and I can try to do something, he said, but the problem is that she's going to die. And I really don't want your baby to die while I'm operating on her. And so he asked us not to do that. We had the transplant team come in and they said, your daughter's really not a good candidate for a heart transplant because her little body is so full of infection right now that she probably can't accept a donor heart. And so Dave and I made the decision that we didn't want to take a heart away from another baby that was more likely to live from a transplant than our baby was. And so we made the decision that we wouldn't put her on the transplant list. And they had told us too, there was also a pretty big possibility that because of the amount of time that we would have to wait to get a transplant, that she would pass away. And so I remember sitting in the room with the nurse that I just loved, Miss Mary. And, she looked at me and said, I just want you to know something right now. And this obviously meant a lot to me because I remember it even now. She said, because we had talked to her and we were pretty much along the lines at that point that we had decided that we were going to take her off of life support and we were going to take her off the medication that was keeping her alive because we were prolonging the inevitable. And I remember my nurse telling me, saying, the decision that you're making is very courageous. And she said, I have watched numerous parents prolong the life of their child. Because there's a lot of guilt involved with making a decision like that. A lot of guilt. You feel like you are giving up on them. You go through some thoughts of what is, like as far as God goes, like, am I making a decision that's taking, my child's life when I shouldn't be? Like, it's a very mentally struggling type of a thing. And I learned a really big lesson that day. Because I had other parents that were around that had children that had experimental type surgeries. And I remember one young couple, especially, their daughter had gone through a surgery that had nobody had ever tried it before. And she was really big on being like, you're not trying hard enough. You need to call, the Boston doctors. You need to do more. And I was like, okay. And I had to kind of, step back. And I remember my nurse telling me, like, you do not listen to anybody else. This is nobody else's decision but yours. And I learned a really big lesson that day. And I, as sad as it is, I stopped telling people what the situation was because nobody that has been in that situation can understand what you're going through. And everybody just has, they want the best for you, but they give you some advice that potentially they have no idea what they're talking about. And so we made the decision as parents that we didn't want to watch our daughter suffer anymore. We didn't want to have to watch her go through what she was going through, her poor little tarnished body. I remember after she did pass away, and, we were able to make that decision. We didn't know how long it would take, but after they took her off all of her stuff, Dave was basically able to hold her all through the night. And then she passed away the next morning, and he had texted me at one point and said that she was almost to her last breath. And so I went back to the room and I held her like this because I hadn't been able to. previously because of all the stuff that she was hooked up to, and I wanted to hold my baby like this so much. So I held her like that while she passed away, and her last breath left her little body. But I'll never regret the decision that we made, because after we started to prepare her and we gave her a bath and got her all ready to go, I didn't realize until they took off some of her bandages that she had PICC lines in her body so that they could get her medication to her, and they were stitched with stitches into her skin in 2 places, and I didn't know that when they put them in, that's how they kept them from falling back out, was they were literally stitched into her skin. And so for me, it was almost a release of realizing that my little girl wasn't going to go through that anymore. She wasn't going to do any more surgeries. I wasn't going to have to watch her struggle through life. And it was a bittersweet blessing. It definitely was. So there you go. Okay. So down the rabbit hole I go. I'm going to pull myself together, and I'm going to go to work. And here's what I want to leave you with today. You are going to be faced, if you haven't already, with lots of decisions in your life. I even got her little binky down from my shelf. Oh. You're going to be faced with a lot of decisions in your life if you haven't already, or there's some coming up. And this is what I want you to know. The decisions that you have to make are between you and your maker and the people that are close to you. So whoever that may be, whether it's your mom, your dad, your spouse. And I know that I try to be really open on my page. So, whatever it is, your higher element, your higher power, whatever you believe in, God, whatever it happens to be, your decisions are between you and your maker, and nobody else. So you don't need to listen to anybody else. You don't need to get their justification. You don't need to get their approval. You don't need to feel like I made the wrong decision because, Margaret next door said whatever, because Margaret next door doesn't know. And Dave and I were having this conversation last night because he has had a wife who passed away from an illness that prolonged her life. He was her caregiver for at least 2 solid years, in and out of the hospital, on feeding tubes, everything. She was basically not able to walk. So he knows. And I said, here's something that people don't know that are going through things like this. I said, the word is quality of life. And he's like, and that's what other people don't understand. There becomes a point where you make a decision that, we could have kept our baby alive for who knows how long. The quality of life of what? So she could lay in an incubator alone, basically without being held for who knows how long. I mean, but other people that haven't been through your situation don't know. And it's such a personal thing that I just want to leave you with that. Don't get wrapped around feeling like and you can use this in any decision. It doesn't need to be life-changing like this is. It could be something super simple. It can be changing a job, moving, getting married, getting a divorce, having a child, whatever decision you're being faced with right now, remember that it is only between you and the person involved and your higher power, God, whoever it is for you. You don't need to get justification from everyone. There are times in my life where I'm like, my mom would not be okay with this. And sometimes I make the wrong decision because my mom is probably right. But I don't need the justification from my mom. As I move forward with my coaching, there are a lot of people that are going to be like, they're not going to be supportive. I don't care, because I'm not here to make everybody happy. I'm here to make myself happy and to work on my best me. And along the way, there's going to be some people that are going to support it and some people that aren't. And that's how everything is going to be with the decisions that you make. All right. Okay, guys. thanks for being here. Thanks for letting me share my story with you. Thank you, Mandy. I love you tons. I'm going to wear my Mad Hatter Alice in Wonderland socks because I'm going to go back. This is the good thing. If you're watching me and you're like, how did this lady just talk about this and then just get out of her closet and go to work? I'm going to tell you, this is what happens when you release trapped emotions. Because I can talk about my trauma, and yeah, sure, I get emotional because, right, that's part of being a human. But I can process through my emotion, and you just watched it. You just watched me do what I'm all about. You watched me process through a full emotion, and I processed it, and it came through, and I'm done. And so now I can pick up the pieces, and I can go throughout my day. My friends, that is the beauty of being able to process through trapped emotions. Okay, there you go. So I hope you have a beautiful day. I hope this gave some of you some strength to know that you can do it. You can. It's hard. It is. There's no doubt about it. Life sucks. Sometimes it's full of heartache, but you can do it. And have a beautiful Tuesday. Hi, Amber. I've been thinking a lot about you. So just know that I'm sending you positive vibes.